I have a friend of mine that I grew up with. He was always frustrated with technology. This was a roommate of mine, and so this was back in the days of DVD players, and we still use VHSs. Whether he was installing a new one or whether he was trying to figure out a program on his computer or whatever the case was, he would always get so frustrated. He was technologically inept. And yet he would look at it and go, oh, this program is so dumb. As if the problem was with the program. It was an ID10T error. Some of you will get that in about 20 minutes. Oh, there it is. But the problem was always with the program. The problem was always with the DVD player. The problem was always with, but it wasn't with his own understanding. I don't understand it, so the problem must be this program. In the same way, when some people encounter difficult truths about God, they assume that the problem must be with God and not them. For example, the Bible says, you might say, that God answers prayer, and yet my life is hard. I've asked God to take away my suffering, but I am still suffering. Therefore, God must not answer prayer. You ever thought that? Or perhaps you've encountered somebody that's given this kind of argument. Well, you say that God is all-powerful and all good, and yet there's still evil in the world. And since there's evil in the world, God cannot be both all-powerful and all good. For if God were all-powerful, then he could get rid of evil, but since he hasn't gotten rid of evil, he can't be good. Or, if God were all good, well, then he would really want to get rid of evil, but he hasn't gotten rid of evil, so obviously he can't, and he's not all-powerful. In both of these instances, and in many, many others, if God doesn't act in a manner that I can understand, then the problem cannot be with me. The problem has got to be with God himself. If it doesn't make sense, it must not be true. Now, this person thinks that they're thinking big thoughts about God. But they are, in fact, thinking small thoughts about God because they cannot conceive of a God who would not act exactly how they would act in a given circumstance or have purposes that they could not know or understand. That the only God in their mind that is worth worshiping is a God that can be circumscribed by their own reason. But friend, that would make your rational capacity bigger than God. In which case, that is not a God worthy of your worship. That makes you God. And you are a terrible God, just like me.